Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Transformation.
Welcome to Let's Talk Transformation.
So today,
podcast.
leadership is
Today's
facing a quiet
episode
but
is
profound
about
shift.
turning
The world we
disruption into
operate in
advantage,
isn't just changing
and
faster,
we're going to
it's
be talking
becoming
about one of the
deeply
most
interconnected. I'm going
underestimated
to call it
transformation levers in
hyperconnection.
business, which
So
is
by that I
finance.
mean a decision in
And
technology
today's
can
guest
influence
thinks that
climate
finance
systems, a
leaders who
policy
still
decision
think in
can ripple through
spreadsheets
supply
and
chains across
reconciliations are
continents.
already behind,
So
and that
in other words, we
finance
are
must
no longer
really
managing
evolve from a
isolated
transactional
organizations.
focus
And today's
to
guest is
more
well
of
versed
a
in navigating
value-driven
these
focus.
changes at all levels.
And joining us
And I'm
today is someone
delighted to
who has done
welcome, or
exactly
rather
that.
welcome
So
back,
I'm
Matt
delighted to
Evans as a
welcome Jasmine
second-time
Ahmed,
guest
a
on Let's Talk
transformation
Transformation.
executive who's led
So Matt,
$100 million
CEO and
plus
co-founder
budgets,
of
delivered
EarthSavvy.
$120
Matt,
million
welcome back to
plus
Let's
in
Talk
annual
Transformation.
benefits, and has
Thanks, Susie.
elevated
It's great
finance
to be
across
back.
global
Great to talk to you
industries,
again.
and now leads
Likewise,
finance,
and just
technology, and
coming off
data
the back of the
capabilities at
conversation we were
Legends
having,
Global. Jasmine, welcome
last
to the
time
show.
on Let's Talk
Hi,
Transformation, we
thank
were
you, Susie.
discussing
It
the
was really,
precursor
really
for me
good
to this
meeting you and looking
discussion.
forward
It was in
to
2020, we were
this
talking about
conversation.
data-driven ways
Yeah,
of working
likewise.
and being
And
data
Jasmine,
savvy.
you
And
are always
I know that you've got
pioneering
decades of
the importance
experience
of
in
investing
technology,
in finance
economies,
functions
ecosystems,
to
supply
create
chains.
value
But
for
of course, you know,
organizations. But
everything
you
is
also believe
interlinked,
that
and
to
one
stay
decision in
relevant,
one corner of the system
finance
today
must
can
also
ripple
balance
across
EQ and
industries,
IQ
communities, and now even the
and start
planet
rethinking
at an incredible
ROI in a
speed. So,
platform-driven,
you know, you've
sort of
gone through
more
deep tech
influencer-powered
innovations,
economy.
digital
So
service
in today's
businesses,
episode,
corporate
we're going
data
to be asking,
science,
what does
end-to-end
finance
digital
look like when
platforms,
it
so
drives
SkyWise and
decisions,
Airbus,
not
architecture and
just
construction
reports
in the top
them?
hat.
Why
And
do
now
digital
startups, in the
transformations
time
fail
that,
to
that
deliver
we've known
ROI?
each other, you've
And
been
what must
through
leaders
these
do
different
differently
steps. Can
right
you
now
tell us a
to
little
stay
bit about your
relevant? So,
latest
Jasmine,
venture,
let's dive straight
EarthSavvy,
in. You've moved
and what
finance
problems
teams
do
from
you see in the
reconciliation to
leadership
decision
innovation
enabling.
landscape that made you
What's the
create
hardest
EarthSavvy?
habit to kill in a team
Well, I
that
think what you were
spent
saying
years
before, Susie, is
measuring
actually a great
past?
introduction to what we're
Well,
doing
if
at
you think
EarthSavvy and the
about,
reason we
as
founded the
finance
company in the first place.
leaders or
And that is
finance
the fact
talent,
that
what do we get
everything
rewarded for?
today
We get rewarded
is
for
well,
from a very
hyperconnected,
young
to
age in
borrow
our
your
early
word,
days
and the
is
need to have
numbers.
insights about
Yeah.
not
Being
just what's going
number
on inside
jockey,
your own business
understanding
or inside
numbers,
your own
doing
community,
calculations,
but about
building
how you're
financial
connected to
models,
other
reporting
companies,
them.
other
That is
communities,
what
other
we are
nations around
rewarded
the
for
world.
time and time
That's
again.
becoming
And
increasingly important.
that in
And
itself
effectively,
becomes a
what we
liability
saw
for us in this
when
day and
Laura and I
time.
founded
So I
EarthSavvy
would
was
say
that
the biggest challenge that I see
investment
time
in
and time
satellite
again is
data
when I
and
speak
what's
to
called
finance
Earth
folks, say,
observation
guys,
has created this
you don't need to
incredible
worry
database
about
of the
proving to
planet for
folks that you
measuring
know how to build
huge amounts of
models. You don't need
information
to prove
every
to
single
anyone
hour
that you are
about
you
what's
know
going
the
on
numbers
the
better than
ground, what's
anyone
going
else.
on
You're very
in the
with your
environment, what's
numbers.
going on
But
in
let's actually
factories,
walk away
ports,
from
and
that
around
and let's
and
talk
sites
about
around the
what's
world.
not in the numbers.
But the challenge has been that this rich
And that's where
database that we've
look
created,
at, pivoting
we don't really have a
from
way to search it. We don't have a way to
a
query it. We don't have a
profession
way
where
to
you
get
are
the
rewarded
insights
for
that we
being
need unless we're
more
already
IQ
experts
based
in
to be
geospatial
more
data science
EQ
and
based of a
analytics. And there's
profession.
just not enough of those
And
people in
how
the
did they
world
react to that,
to
Jasmine, to
get the kind of
walking away from the
information
numbers? Because
to
that's quite a
everybody
big
that
ask,
needs
isn't
it.
it?
It's
So at
very
EarthSavvy,
difficult, right? Like
what
I
we've
think I've seen
created
in almost every
using an
organization at
architecture
all
based on
scales,
AI
when
agents
you
that we
walk
built
into
is an
your
easy
monthly
way for
financial
any of us to
review and you
just
have
ask
your
a question
finance
in our own
team,
words
how
about what's
common
going on in
is
the
it
world
to
around
walk
us, what's
in
going on in
and you're
our
not,
own
and you're
supply
from
chain if we're running
marketing
a
or you're from
business,
product
and
development or
just
you're
get the
from,
answers back
you're
that
a
we need.
customer
So we
or
might
you're in
process
a
a terabyte of
non-finance
satellite
function and your
data,
finance
but we
partner
want to come
comes to
back to you
you
with just a simple
and
sentence
takes
and a
out
simple
not only
insight
their
at the right
spreadsheets,
time,
but probably
and
a
not a
PowerPoint
massive table of
deck
data
that's
or a
about a
complex
half-inch
dashboard,
thick,
one more tool that you
and
have
you
for
flip through and tables after tables after
And as we were
tables,
talking before,
and
you
they
know,
struggle with that. They
I find
genuinely
that very
struggle with,
overwhelming, this whole
and there's
AI
a bit
wave,
of,
because
well,
I don't
what about
feel
they
like I
ask, what if
understand
someone asks me about
enough,
this
and maybe I
number
don't
and
need to
not
understand
having that
enough. But
number on
that,
that
you know,
spreadsheet
what
at
you're
that
doing with
point in
EarthSavvy
time?
is
So it
exactly
gives that
what I would
sense
be
of
looking for,
anxiety
is,
that
you
I
know,
think
just
they just struggle
an
to cope
answer,
with
something
and
that I
let
can
go of and
understand,
disconnect from. But
that's
it's
come out of
okay.
all
It's
this
okay.
data
You
that
don't
I
have
don't
to know
feel that I
every
know
single number
how to manage. So if I
memorized on a
look at, you know,
spreadsheet.
Yeah,
that
so it's more like
huge
a holistic view. But
database that
I mean, if I
isn't
come
being
back to
used,
numbers,
you know,
you've
what
delivered
does
$120
hyperconnection
million
actually mean in
plus in benefits
practice,
across major
Matt, today for
transformations. What's the
organizations
single
and
biggest
decision makers?
thing that you see organizations
Yeah,
doing
well,
wrong
in
in how
practice,
they're
what that
building the
means
business
is
case
that
upfront?
the
I think
effects
the
on your
business case
business. So
upfront,
if
there's
you
a
want
few
to
things,
project
right?
where
So a
you're
lot
going
of
to
these
be
business cases,
a
especially in
week or a
finance
month or a
transformation,
year.
they typically bring
In some ways, the
we
best way
typically
to do
bring in
that
what
is to look at what's
technology.
happening now
And what I
across the
see
rest
over
of
and
the world.
over again is
So
technology
conceptually,
business
if you're
cases are rooted
you know,
in what is the
manufacturing
cost of my
automobiles or
technology,
valves or pipes
making
in
sure that I
Europe,
have
for
enough
example.
funding
Well,
to configure
you're
the
being
solution
tremendously
and go
influenced
live with the
by things
solution.
that are
What I
happening,
don't
of
see enough
course,
of in the
the
business
Persian Gulf
case
region, which
is,
is
well,
which is
how is
a
this
current
going
crisis,
actually change
but also
way
the
we
choices that people are
operate?
making
How
and
is
other
it going to
producers
actually
around the
change
world.
the way we
If we're
create
seeing
value?
fewer
And
goods come
then
from the
from an
Strait of
investment
Hormuz, less
standpoint,
aluminum,
one
for
of the
example,
biggest
coming
blind
into
spots
Europe.
I see is,
Well,
it's
are there
all
people
good
that are
in
picking up
theory
the
that we're
slack?
going to
Are there
configure
people,
this new
is that going to
solution,
end up
go
in a
live
supply
in 3
disruption?
months or 12 months
The
or
choices
18 months, depending
others are
on the
making, the
initiative.
choices that
But
nation states
it's not
and
just a
actors are
technical
making
go
that
live.
might
It's about
impact how
making the
goods
right
are moving and
investments
how
in
things
talent
are coming
and
to you.
culture
Well, you
and
can
ways
anticipate
of
what's
working
happening
up
in your own
front
company
to
weeks,
elevate
months
the
ahead of
people
time. If you
alongside
can
the
see what's
tech,
happening
and
now,
not having
deeper
a
into your supply
pure,
chain and
having
and
more
sites
of a
around the world.
business go live
And what I
versus
found
a
throughout my whole
technical go
career
live.
is that
And when you talk technical go
experts
live, I mean,
and
it's all about
practitioners,
adoption,
whether
isn't
you're
it?
a purchasing manager at a
Often
manufacturer
scaling
or
and scaling
a planner
behavioral
or a
change and culture,
financial
like you
investor,
just talked about,
you know the
is
questions you
where
want to
it sort
ask.
of
That's what
lies.
expertise
What
really
does a
is. It's
living
knowing what the
business
key
case actually look like,
question is.
therefore, in
And we
practice?
build
And by that, I
Earth
mean,
Savvy to help you
who
get
owns
the
it?
answer.
How often does it get
Because
reviewed?
sorting through all the
And what
data
happens
yourself
when
is
you
just not
see that the
possible today. There's
culture
too
and the
much of it. It's too
leadership
complex.
is not being adopted?
And I
Right.
like the idea of
And
knowing what
I'm sure
questions we
you've
have to
seen, and
ask,
I'm
because
sure, like,
we
when
still
we
need
take
that
a
human
business
input,
case,
don't
especially if you're
we? In
finance,
terms
if
of
you think about
knowing the
the
right
culture of
questions,
finance, we
being
have business
discerning enough to
cases
know
that
what is
actually
right for our
drive
business.
capital investment
And
decisions
that's where, for
that
me,
go
it's
to the
about any
board,
kind
and
of
there's,
leadership awareness, if you like, as
authorization of,
well. I mean,
it's
we had
more
a brilliant example
funding
just
driven,
shift when,
right? So,
you designed
and
and
then
set
you
up
take
SkyWise,
that,
Epsis' data platform,
assumption,
which was, of course,
and a
about
few
data
things.
and governance, but
One,
particularly also
you're
about leadership and
driving
ways
it
of
purely
working,
based on
because
what's my funding
leadership models
requirement.
today have been made
if
for
I
predictable
also
systems.
peel
the
that
ordered
onion a
world
bit,
in
we have a $5
Dave
million
Logan's language, but
investment. We see the
today's
hard
world is behaving
lines
more
of
like a
you
living
need the
ecosystem,
consultants
but
to
in a
come in, you need the
polarized way, as
technology
we've
provider
mentioned
to come
recently
in,
with
you
the,
need to do A, B, and
the
C.
Middle East
But how
situation and
often do
things
we
like
see in
that.
that
So
business case that
we
says,
talked a lot about
actually, I
data
need
savvy
to
leaders,
invest
and
in
understanding
this
data and
type
data
of
analytics is
talent
really
as
important.
a
And today
no
I feel
regret
like
investment in my
we need to be
organization,
AI
because
savvy
that's going
leaders,
to truly
which brings me to
unlock the
two
value
questions.
here.
What's
How
the
often do we
difference, Matt,
see,
for you
let's
between
invest
being data savvy
in
and
this
being
much
AI
to
savvy?
redefine the culture
And
that we need to make this
why is it
real?
important? I mean, and
So I think
asking
yes.
the right questions, yes, but it's more than
And
that, isn't
that's
it?
one thing that I see up front.
It is, yeah. I mean, I
second
think
thing,
asking the right
other
question,
end that I see
it's always been at the heart of
is we typically,
transformation, right?
because
I
we
mean,
are
trying to
so much
transform a
around
company or transform
funding
a
and the
system
source of the
is
funding.
all about
We've
questioning the
gone
underlying
live
assumptions.
on
It's
April
about
1st.
recognizing
On
that
April
the
2nd,
way
when
you've
we have
always
the
done things doesn't
steerco,
have to be the
you
way
don't
you do
talk
them in
about
the
it
future.
anymore. You're done.
And I
But
think,
adoption
as
happens
we said, 10 years
after
ago,
April
when it was really
1st,
about being a
right?
data
And
center,
that requires
I think we
effort.
had a tremendous
Adoption
resource
doesn't just
of
magically
new
happen.
information and new
No,
analysis
unfortunately
tools that
not.
could
And
help
like I
us
always say,
not only
training
ask
is
better
not
questions,
adoption.
but also get more
Yes,
precise
that's
answers
right.
and
And
get the
one of the
information that we
biggest
needed to
questions
act
I
to
come up
drive
against that
change.
is often asked by
I think
finance, but
what
not only
AI
finance,
has
is,
brought to us
how do you
is
measure cultural
fundamentally an ability
adoption? How do you
to go
measure
deep
agility or employee
and
engagement?
to
And so where
I
does
guess,
that
if you
fit
will,
into this living business case?
it's
Because
not only
it's
asking the
notoriously
right question,
hard
but
to
it's also
measure, isn't it?
having,
Transformation. So what
it's
would the
offering new
ROI
opportunities, I guess, to
framework
question ourselves
look
and
like?
to make sure
Because
that
like you say, it
that
does
we're
need to
really,
be, we're measuring funding, we're
imagining
measuring figures, we're
what
also
we're connected to
measuring
and what
the
could
sort of
happen
more
in a much
behavioral
deeper way
aspects.
than
Right.
before. Because what
And
AI
this
has
is where,
done
like,
on
it
top
becomes
of
a bit
having
ironic
access
with
to great
finance
data,
folks in
is
general,
it's
right? Because
allowed
we're very numbers driven, and
computers,
that's
it's
not how
allowed
we're
agents to go off and
organically,
do work on our
naturally
behalf.
inclined
And
towards,
what
right?
that can
So
do
when I
if
think
we've
about,
got
let's
an
take
idea,
finance,
if
for
we've got a
example.
transformation
I
that we're trying to
know,
drive, is it
I
can act like
truly
a
believe in how do we
multiplier
create
for
value from an initiative.
our own abilities,
If I
as
have
long
a new
as it is
technology
still
in the
grounded
way I am
in that idea
managing
of
my
the direction we want to go in, the
my
questions we
customer
want to ask,
billings and
and that we're
receivables
not
and that
simply
entire
sort of trying to
process, my
outsource our
revenue
thinking
cycles, right? If I have a
an
new
AI model.
technology that manages my revenue
And I think,
cycle,
we
what is the
totally
true
earn
value of
another
that? The true value
leadership
is,
necessity, which is
of
systems
course, I've
thinking
got my
today.
financial hard
And, if I need
benefits,
to consider the
but
long-term
true
systemic
value is
impact
when my
as opposed to
business
the
can start
short-term wins,
having
in today's
more
world,
value
what is more
creation
dangerous
conversations
for
with
you,
my
Matt? That
clients.
moving too slowly or moving too fast without understanding the
noise out,
system that
and
we're
they can have
deciding
much more richer
I think it's
conversations that
if you're
focus
moving too
around new
quick, if
revenue
you're trying to
channels,
drive so
or
fast in one
how to
direction, you're
uplift,
ignoring
expand
the system
the full
around you, and you're
services
ignoring the
and not
social
get
impacts. I think
distracted from the
that
noise.
is the bigger danger.
And
And we've all
those
seen it with
conversations
AI
themselves
algorithms and
is
models on
a
social
more
media.
Yes.
what I
past
call a
15
wishy-washy
years,
type of,
and
you can't touch
increasingly
it, it's an
with better and better
intangible, right? But
versions
you
of
can
that.
feel it. But
It's
how
very
do
easy
we
to find yourself getting
incorporate
drawn deeper and
that
deeper
into our
into a
business
rabbit
case
hole.
and start measuring, going, okay,
Seeing
is the
the
focus
same
of
kind
the
of going into greater
conversation
and
how
greater
I
depth,
engage
but on
with
the
my
same kinds of
customers,
questions
is
about the
that
same
now
topics,
changing?
the same locations, the
And
same
how do I actually make
companies,
sure
whatever
that
it may be.
changes? Because
And I
that is
think that is a
actually
real
how
and
I'm
that's
going to
where the speed of
expand
AI
my
and that
top line
ability
growth.
to have
Or let's take your product development
models and
team.
agents working
How am I
alongside you
actually
becomes,
enabling
in a sense,
them
dangerous.
to go to market with new
It's
with
wonderful to
features
be able to go
quicker and
faster,
faster and getting
but
that
you
voice
almost
of the
want to
customer
use them,
into the mix at a
use an
faster
AI
pace.
agent like
And
an explorer,
incorporating that
rather
into the
than
business
a
case, I
builder,
think, is a
right?
missed
You have to be
opportunity.
doing use it to help yourself
that
push
we're
the
not
boundaries
doing
of what
today
you're
in the
thinking about,
status quo.
to recognize
As much as
where
I would
there are
like.
new sources of data, new
like how
sources
often
of
do you see that
insight, or new
happening, or is
connections
it one
that
of
you
those
might not be
things where
aware
you
of.
always have to add it?
But be really cautious if you.
I feel like you always have to add it
models
because it
more
doesn't
and more
come
refined,
natural.
deeper and
Because
deeper
we like,
versions
as
of
finance
the
folks,
same
we like
questions on the
binary
same
business
topics that
cases,
you've always
right?
been looking at.
And so,
If I look at
and this also
human
means as
agentic
finance
collaboration,
people, in order for us to incorporate
it's
that, we have to
complexifying
walk
decision
away from our
making
spreadsheet.
for
And
humans
it's okay.
in
We
a way
don't
for
need
me.
to
So,
spend 10 hours a
if a
day
CEO could instantly
behind
gain
our
one new
spreadsheet
mental
at a laptop.
capability to navigate
How do
that
we as
complexity,
finance people
what would
do
it
that?
be for
We
you,
get
Matt?
out
Because as
of
you
our
say,
offices
we can quite
and walk the
easily, in a
floors.
binary
We
way,
go
go
in,
quite
and it may
deeply
have
down a rabbit
nothing
hole
to do with
that we're trying to
I'll
control.
take like Legends
And maybe
Global. We
that's
have our
not the
venues,
objective.
right? Now, am I a
Yeah, I
venue
think
expert? Absolutely
the
not.
one core
But
skill
is there
that
a
I
huge
would find
value
most
in
helpful
me as a
now,
finance
and
person
in all fairness, it was
visiting
a
our
core skill
venues
10 years
and
ago and
walking
20
the
years ago
venues
too.
to touch and
But
feel the
it's that
intangibles
what I
in
would
the
call
air?
true systems thinking.
Absolutely.
Right?
Will
That
I see
ability
that
to almost
value
have in your
materialize
head a
and
model
monetize
of
overnight?
how
No.
you think the world
But
around you is
over a
working,
period of
how
time,
you think,
absolutely,
whether
because
that's
I will
the world of your own
understand
organization, if you're trying to
where
drive
those
change within your
opportunities
business,
are
or
organically.
a broader system, a broader group of
So, I mean,
communities and
which is
organizations.
almost a
that you're trying to
different
drive
profile
change
from the ones that we would
in a
typically,
country or in an
or
industry.
stereotypically discuss
But
today for
understanding
finance.
for yourself,
But
what
I
is
want to
that
come back to the
hypothesis
profile
that you
discussion.
have in
But
your own head about
if I
how
look at
things
new
are working and
models,
how they're
while we're on
interconnected?
business case and
If
discussing,
you're able to
business
build
case
that
and
and you're always able
finance
to keep that
figures,
at the center of your thinking,
younger leaders are growing
then
up with
additional data
influence,
or additional
income,
insights
platform,
or a new
monetization
AI
models,
model
and they're
is going
normal, in
to
inverted commas,
be,
for them.
you're
So
going to be able to fit
what
it into
does
that
that
framework, and you're
mean,
going to be able to see
Jasmine,
where is it
for the way
challenging your
finance
hypothesis,
thinks?
where is it
Because
driving you
they
perhaps to
are
reconsider
new
how
and
you thought
they
things were
are
working,
normal,
where is it
and we're
reinforcing your own
moving towards
beliefs,
them. But there is also
but it gives you
legacy,
that rubric and
Yes,
that
yes. And
index
if I look
of
at some of these
how the data
platforms,
can fit
right?
together rather than simply
What
being
is the
overwhelmed
power of
with the
that
flood of
platform
information.
with young
I
folks or
think you and I
anyone
probably
who's
both saw
engaging in
that
these
with
platforms
how
to
many
turn into
companies
a
failed
business
trying to
model?
do
Yes.
digital
That they
transformation.
may
Just
be
the
providing
overwhelming
a
amount of
specific
data that
service,
collect, which is an order of
but
magnitude
in
or more
addition
worse
to that,
now
they're
with AI
engaging
agents.
with
If you're not
a
organizing that
community,
around your own version of a system,
which in
your own
turn is a
hypothesis,
customer base that
it's simply
shares
overwhelming and you're like a ship
certain
with no rudder, you're just being
commonalities,
blown across the
right?
ocean with
And first-party
Yeah.
no
data,
path to
you
follow.
can't put a number
And I think
behind
that's
it.
why it's so
First-party
important,
data
discussions we've already
is
had about digital transformation and why
instrumental.
some
It is
transformation fails,
probably one of the
around
most
understanding
powerful insights.
my system, how
And
I
it's
see
being
it,
able to
what it means to me,
capture that
how
insight
others perceive it, and things like
while
that.
respecting
Is
data
that the
privacy
playbook,
and
in
every
inverted commas,
regulation
Matt,
out
behind
there, and
Earth
being
Savvy?
very respectful
Because
of
you're
individual
giving
privacy.
a very simple
But you are
output for
capturing
something
first-party
that may be
data
quite complex
and being
going
able
in.
to capture that as a science.
I think that's
being
exactly
able
it.
to
Yeah, and that
synthesize it,
simplicity
and then
and
being
that
able to
focus is
monetize
really
it.
what motivated us to
Right?
build Earth
And
Savvy, and it's
is
the
that
thing we
that's
talk about the
easier
most
said
with the
than
team
done,
is
but
how
it
do
is a
we
huge
keep
opportunity that I think we
the
have,
end user
especially
focus and that
in this
idea
very
that people just need
digital,
an answer.
social
Because I
media,
think I found
AI
throughout my
worlds
career,
that we live
especially
in.
when you put new platforms in the hands
particularly AI,
of
which
people
is
who are
generating
intimately
value
day-to-day
or
involved in
cost
projects.
differently in an
They often know
exponential
exactly
speed.
what
What
they want to
happens
answer, what questions
when
they want to ask, and
it's
they've
been
got great
generated in ways
insight.
that don't map
They might not
to the
realize that the
traditional
answers are
P&L,
out
like
there.
you
They
just
might not
said?
know how
What
to
would you
get
say the
them.
specific financial
But
blind spots are to be
everybody,
looking
all
for?
of us, when we're doing our
So
day-to-day
when I
work,
think
we
about
do build a
AI
mental
and I
model.
think
We
about the
build a
blind spots,
hypothesis
I
about
think
how
this is,
things are
to
working.
me, I look at
And
AI
so
as
with
not a
Earth Savvy, what we
buzzword.
want to
I
do
look
is
at it
give
as
people
an
that
evolution and
easy ability to
sophistication
say,
of the
I've got a
algorithm.
question, and maybe I've always
totally.
had it. Maybe that question is a
Right?
decade
That's all
old.
it is. We can put
We're
whatever
going to give you
name
the
in front
tools
of it.
to
It's
answer
just
it,
an
and we're going to
algorithm.
put
But what
AI
are
agents and
algorithms good
models
at?
and huge
Algorithms are
amounts of
good at
data.
when you can put business
work for
rules
you
behind
rather
it.
than putting you
When
in
you
front
can
of
define
a massive
rules
dashboard
behind
that only
it,
makes your life harder.
what
than
are they
what it
not
was.
good at?
Yeah, which
is
feels
they can
too good to be
amplify
true.
the
It feels
impact
too
and,
simple.
and that's where bias
Well, and in some ways
right?
it is, and that's
Uneducated
why, I mean, it really is,
bias. Those
it's
are the
another
pros
one
and
of these
cons of
true
it.
deep tech
But
problems.
then as we think about
it's
this,
something
I
we
think
see
what
over and
we
over
also
again.
as
It's
humans,
easy,
while there's a big
it's easy to make
and
data
trend
available
towards
and surface it in a complex
STEM-based,
way.
because that's the world
With something
of
like
AI,
SkyWise,
I
the
think
hard
what
part was not
we're
collecting the
missing out
sensor data.
on
It was making it
is
understandable to a
what is it that
purchasing
we
manager
can't
at
get
an
an
airline
algorithm to
or
do.
somebody working
That's
in a
the
network
creativity
operations center who's just trying to help
and
passengers
the
get to where they need to
EQ
go
side
after
of
a
it.
storm.
So
That was the
how
hard
do we
part. It was not getting the
over-index
data. It wasn't
on
organizing
that
it. It wasn't
element of it that's
computing on
been
huge
left
volumes of it.
behind
It
and
was, how do
incorporate
you make
that
it
into our
understandable? How do you
model?
make it simple enough that people can get
And
value
how
from
do
it?
you see
And I think it's really
organizations,
interesting because
leaders doing
innovation
that?
often used to mean building better products.
I think
And today,
foremost,
what we're talking about
we live.
is redesigning systems
I'm sure I'm
also
dating
around those
myself.
products. So not just technical
We live in a
innovation, but
world,
you know,
or I grew
cognitive
up in
and
a
awareness
world
innovation, if you
where
like.
we
So
organically were
what's one
trained
assumption about
to either be left
innovation in
side or
general,
right side of
Matt,
our
that
brain.
you think leaders
And
must
right,
completely unlearn today in order
and I
to be
think
capable
still,
of
and to this day, I think it's still
navigating the
inclined that
systems
way,
thinking
right?
that we spoke about
Unfortunately, so
before.
yeah.
I think
I
the
think
thing
what
that you have to
I'd
unlearn
like,
the
what I
most
think
is
actually in
that
this
view
AI
that you
world
alluded to, Susie,
is
that
grooming our
innovation is
talent from a
about
very
new
young age
products and
to
new
be a
tools
balance
and new
between EQ
solutions.
and IQ.
You
I
mentioned,
need
we
to
were chatting before
understand
we
the
started
EQ
this call
side
about
of the
an
house,
app that you built with
because
Lovable, which is a
my
wonderful tool
robots
for
and my algorithms
for
and my
building
AIs
new
just won't
solutions,
get
new
it.
products, new websites, new apps without doing any
They're going to
coding
miss a
at
beat
all.
on it.
And I think these kind
And
of
then on
tools
the
are really
flip
exciting
side,
on the one hand,
my IQ
but they
side,
also
I need
make
to
it very easy
understand
for
it
us
if I'm
to
going to
create,
live in an
again,
AI
more
world, because I
products,
need to
more
understand
tools,
how to build and
more
maintain and
things to
understand
go
my
on the
algorithms,
shelf
right? At the end of the day.
conceptually in
So
our
I think it's
organization or our company.
pivotal of how do we
And I think what
actually
leaders
build
miss
both
oftentimes
sides
is
of
that
that
real
muscle, which I
innovation
truly
is
believe
not about
as a society, as much as
stocking
we
your
have,
shelves with new
I think
stuff.
in
It's really
some
about
sectors,
curation.
we've tainted
You know,
folks
the
that you
hard
can
part
either
about
be one or
building
the
a
other,
museum is not
or
getting
you're
lots of
natural.
things. It's about being really
I actually
careful
think
and really
that's a
selective about
misnomer. I think
what
that
actually goes
paradigm
on
can be
display, what
completely
really
broken,
matters,
and
what
we
is
can
really delivering the
focus
kind
on
of
having
insights
more
that you need.
folks who
Because
have
with AI
muscles on
today,
both sides.
we've got the
But it's
ability
very
to build
binary, isn't it? It's
hundreds
left or
of
right, but it's
times
not,
as
is it?
many
It's always a mix
solutions
of
quickly as we
both,
ever could in the
and humans
past.
are complex,
And what that
complex
will do
beings.
for an
So,
organization, if you're
but what
not
does that
careful,
mean
is
then?
just
If I look
add
at
to the
talent and
noise and make it
recruitment,
harder
and
and harder to
what does it
focus on the
mean
things that really matter.
for
And
the
it gets you
profile you're
again
looking
to
for
that
when you're
feeling of just
recruiting
being
finance
adrift in a
talent
sea
that
of
can sit at the
new
strategy
tools, new
table,
methods, new
Jasmine?
processes,
Because
new
in the
products.
same way
When
that
what we
it's not left or
essentially
right,
really need to do
silos
right
of
now is to
organizations
cut
and
that
different
back,
departments
be a
are now having
curator,
to
not
work together
not a
more
shopkeeper.
across the organization,
And
which
of
I think
course,
is
you know,
brilliant.
going
But
shopping is
it calls
it's
for
quite
different skills, doesn't
satisfying.
it?
You're like, oh, you get
It
that
absolutely.
dopamine hit. Oh, I do
I'll
understand
give
this.
you,
I do know how to do this.
the
And then, of
the
course,
number of
it's just something
conversations
else
I
on
get
a
into, and
shelf, which I
I'll
think
ask folks, right? Like, and if I was to even ask
often
some
we're
of your
moving so
audience
fast we
members
don't
that
see
when
how
we
much
go
stuff
in
we're
and we
stocking.
interview talent,
So
or when
I
our
like the
folks
idea of
go in and
curating
interview
it. I know you
talent,
do a lot of
what do?
mentoring
We take a job description
of
that is
startups, but not
actually
only.
based on the
You know,
what,
what's the
Yeah.
biggest
technical
challenge
skills,
that comes up
and
today,
we
Matt, as we move into
interview
this
them
AI
for the
era
technical skills,
where I think a lot of us do
and
feel
then
adrift, even
we
those that are
go
AI
down the
savvy, if you
road
like, in
after
inverted
several
commas.
rounds, and maybe
Well,
at
I think
some
the
point
biggest
we
issue that
interview
I
them
see
for
over
their
and over
mindset.
again is the assumption
What if we
that
flipped it
people
and we
will
said,
adopt a
listen,
new tool
actually,
if it does something
in
great
this
for them. I
environment,
think what we
the
forget,
mindset we need is someone who has a
whether if
growth
you're trying to drive
mindset,
transformation in an
someone who is
organization or you think
comfortable
about the system that
with
you're part of, is that
in ambiguity.
every new thing we
Someone
ask
who is
somebody to do
comfortable
means
with
that
A,
they're going
B,
to have
and
to
C.
drop something they were
What
doing
if we
before.
actually screened
So I think
people
when I'm
for that
mentoring
mindset
startups,
first?
especially, that you have to almost
Interesting.
challenge this thinking.
And then
Just because
say,
you
look,
built something that's
actually,
wonderful and
and if I
offers
now
somebody
do
something new
another
that they've never
step
had
down
before,
into
it
finance
doesn't mean that
talent,
they're going to pick that product off the shelf, because
what if I actually say,
everybody,
listen,
all of us, our
actually, you know
days are
what?
full.
I'm going to
Our
actually
work
screen
lives,
my
our home
talent
lives.
not based on the
We all have ways that
traditional
we spend our time. We
domain domain
all have jobs that
expertise of
we're doing now.
accounting,
And I
I'm
think we
going
have to be
to
very, very
interview and
cautious
assess
and
my
careful
talent
that
based
just
on
because we have a
their
new solution
storytelling
and we
capabilities,
think that it
their
could help, it could offer new set
critical
of insights, a
thinking
new way to do
capabilities.
business, a new
You know, the
way to
things
organize
that
ourselves.
in my
It doesn't
organization,
mean
I
that
feel
people are
like,
going to
look,
pick it up
this
because
is what
we
actually is
forget
going to make it
sometimes
or
that
break
picking
it
up
for
something
high
new means
performing
dropping
talent.
something old.
Not someone to keep the shop
So
floor open,
I tend to focus,
but
we've
high
tried
performing
this
talent,
with Earth
right?
Savvy, and I advise everybody
And what
to
if we
try to
flipped it
figure
that
out
way? So I would,
how can you deliver the
you know,
real
I'm a big
insights and the real
advocate
value
of
that
flipping the
your
equation.
solution or your product is offering.
Yeah, me too. And I think it's a completely
without
different
making
set of
people
leadership
learn
skills
a new
almost.
tool
And,
and a new process.
you know,
Probably the thing that I'm most proud of.
What does digital
the third step
fluency
is
therefore
the
mean
feedback from one of our
for
very
a
first
CFO and
users
finance
who's
leaders
running a
in
supply chain
2026?
organization for a manufacturer.
So digital
You know, when
fluency,
he told us that he had looked
literacy
at
or digital
a couple of
fluency
dozen
for
different
me in
AI
finance
supply
means
chain
it does
tools
not
over the past 2
mean
years.
that I know
And that
how
ours was the very first that didn't
SAP
make him
works.
learn a new process.
It doesn't
It was the
mean I
first thing
know
that he could just say
how
whenever he needed to. If he had a question,
one
that
stream. I
became an
mean,
answer
there's a
at that time.
portfolio of
Didn't need to
portfolio
learn a new
between your
interface, didn't need to
SAPs
have
and
a
your
new
Oracles and your
dashboard on his desktop,
D365s and your
didn't need to
Blacklines. There's
change
so
the way
many
that he was
technologies.
working in
It's
order to
not
get
about
this new source of information.
even
And
ChatGPT.
we forget what
It's
that means
not
for
about
people who are
how
just trying to
that
get their jobs done.
specific
Yeah,
technology at a
and yeah.
keystroke works.
Yeah.
It's
And it's so
about
important in the world of cognitive
understanding
overload, isn't it? Like you
agnostic
say,
to the
to not
technology
add
of
to the
how
overload.
data models
That's right. And our
are
job, I think the
designed
core job
and
of a
maintained,
transformation leader or
and being
somebody,
able
whether
to
you're at a
use
startup or a big company, if
your
you're trying to
critical
drive
thinking
innovation,
then to
your number
drive
one job
how they
today is
should
how do
be
you take
designed and
complexity
maintained.
away? How do you
And
simplify somebody's
agnostic
job?
to the
Because
tool itself.
yes,
I
increasingly we'll
think
have AI
where
agents and
marrying
we'll have
ourselves to the
software who can
tool
do a lot of the
is
work for us that we had to do
we're doing
manually just
a big
2 or 3
disservice
years
to
ago.
ourselves.
Mhm.
Tools will come and go,
So all of our jobs are
but the
increasingly
foundation
becoming
and the
about
fundamentals are not
curation,
changing.
about stepping back,
And so I'm
maintaining that
hearing
mental
that
model, that
CFOs need to evolve their
hypothesis, that
operating model
idea of the system
quite
that we're
quickly.
embedded in.
What do you think is the biggest
Trying to be
evolution
thoughtful about
of operating
how we
model?
evolve that
Because it's
over
quite easy
time.
to say
Well,
traditional
agents and
P&L
software
to
can do work
platform, but it's
around
not
us.
quite as
But it's
black
all
and white
about,
as that, is it?
yeah, how do we
It's not
make
black
life
and white,
simpler
and I
for
think this
people,
is not just beyond
adding new
within
tools and
finance, but
complexity.
also beyond
Yeah, and
finance.
we're moving
Because
from
I'm,
controlling to sort of orchestrating, aren't we?
the way I
Which
see
is
the
a different
world,
type
if I had a
power,
foresight,
and
is
it's a
today if you
different
go into
type of skill, isn't it? And if
organizations,
I
you are
fast
part
forward
of
even
the
5
finance
years,
team versus
what
the
do you think, Matt,
marketing
will
team versus the
distinguish the
technology team.
organizations that
And
thrive
depending on your
in this era
discipline,
of
you get
hyperconnectedness
groomed
from
to
those
stay
that struggle?
within your vertical.
I think those
I
organizations
actually
that really
imagine a
thrive
world where
will
those
first and
verticals are
foremost be the
gone.
ones that
Yeah.
really try to
And you
build
bring
those
in
connections
talent that are
internally
more
between different
horizontal
people
and
in different
fluid.
functions.
So if I
Because
take that in
more and
mind,
more,
then actually if I think
If you
about
think
the
about it,
future of
AI is
finance
both a
talent,
tool and
do I
almost
really
a
need to
weapon or
hire
a source
someone
of
with an
problems
accounting
too. It's
major? Do
because
I
we can
really
create
need
so
to
quickly,
hire
because we
someone
can
with
do
a
so much
finance
analysis,
major?
and gather so much
Maybe
data,
I
and write
bet
so many
on
reports,
someone
and create so many new
who
apps.
has a different
We really
discipline,
have the danger
and
that
then
one
I
of
bring them
disrupting big
in
swaths of the
because of their
organization
critical
one
because
idea
of their
that we have in the shower
storytelling
one morning
capability, or
can end up
because of their critical
influencing
thinking, or
hundreds of
because of
people's
their digital
working lives.
fluency.
So
I
I think
bring
the
them onto my
organizations that are
team,
really successful
and then
that
I
take full advantage of
upskill
AI are
them
using agents
to
in a smart
understand
way that are,
finance
in the
better.
end, more
And I
productive and more
upskill
successful,
them
are
to
going to be the
understand
ones that
accounting
start
better.
by linking
So
up
I
their
would
own
almost
teams
propose
internally
that
and
maybe
helping
that's
people
one way
understand,
of building the future of
much in the way
finance.
that we did early on in the
Wow.
transformation at
Okay, so
Airbus.
recruiting for
Where do you
mindset
fit
first,
inside of those
and
internal
then
value
teaching
chains of the
finance
company?
is essentially what I'm
Who
hearing.
depends on you?
Yes.
Who do you depend
Okay,
on?
because I think it's really interesting in
what can
terms
you
of
do
breaking down
fundamentally
silos,
with
functional
new
silos,
data
and working
and
across
AI models and
organizations.
agents at your disposal?
Is
How can you
having enough
make life
clarity
easier for the people
and
around you
accountability for
and
it
for the
not
rest
to
of the
paralyze
organization, not
decision
just for
making.
yourself?
So if I take
And if
that
you can get that
lens,
mindset in the organization
what
and help
does
people see those
recruiting for mindset
connections,
first
I
bring to
think that
that?
in turn that enables you and
So
accelerates
one,
your
let's
ability
talk
to do
with,
that for your customers and do that for other
growth
stakeholders.
mindset.
I mean, and which brings me to the idea
And
of
having
connection
that
and human
drive,
connection.
like drive
What's
cannot
your
be
vision,
taught.
Matt, for
Either you
us
have
staying
drive or you
connected
don't.
as humans
Right?
as we
But if
move
I'm
into
going
this
to bring
era?
in
Because I know
someone
you
who
have
I
a
know
vision for
who
Earth
is
Savvy today. It's about
passionate and
businesses,
has
but also to
drive,
extend
and
what Earth
they
Savvy
have a
can bring
growth
to
mindset,
individual people.
they
But
display
what's your
intellectual
vision for that? Because
curiosity.
I think we could quite
I'm basically
easily,
bringing
and
someone
for me, it's one
in
of
who's
the
going to
fears I
want
have around the
to
AI
learn.
era. We can quite easily
Right?
just
And
stop
I'd
connecting
rather
as
have
humans.
someone
Yeah.
join my team.
Well, I guess by
Because
nature,
I'm a
I'm
long
more
haul
of an
investor,
optimist,
right?
and
I'm
I
not
certainly
looking
am
for
in
someone
this
Me too.
domain. I think my vision
and
for
the
the
lights
future is
turned on.
really that
But
I
if I
do
know
believe
that
that
someone has that mindset,
the increasing power of
they will be
software,
more
the
willing
increasing
to
ability
put
for us to
the effort
use
to learn
agents
and
and
stretch
tools to
their
help us
muscles and grow in
understand
ways that I
not the
could
complex
not have
details of data,
imagined.
but the key insights
So
embedded in
it gives
it.
me a
That's
talent
going
that
to
I
let
can
us
actually
simplify
groom
a
and
lot
invest
of
for the
the
future.
things that are very difficult
And then
now.
it's
We
like,
spend a
look,
lot of mental energy,
they may not be an
working around the
accounting major,
limitations of
a
software.
traditional
I don't know
accounting or a
about you, but
traditional
I've had
finance
lots of
major,
experiences where
but I will invest
I'm
in
just
them
trying
to
to
give them
go
those
to an event nearby,
capabilities to help
and
them
you've got to
bring that
figure out
far.
Am I going to take transport? Am I going to take a car? If I'm going to take the car, where should I put it? Where do I park? What's the weather going to be like? Do I need an
depending on the
umbrella?
size
Do I
of
need
your
to be
organization,
wearing a heavy jacket in the morning and finding a place to put it in the
Do I want a hamburger? Do I want this?
Exactly. Will there be places to eat? What am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? Will it be
and
too
that's
crowded?
okay.
I really
That
believe
means
that
you now
increasingly in the
have
future
someone
that
who's
we'll
in product
have agents
development
that
who
can
is
help us.
financially more savvy.
There's lots of data out there today.
Absolutely.
You know, I'm jumping
And as
between
an
Google Maps
organization,
and
you're
weather app
uplifting the
and
entire talent, and as an
websites and trying to
organization,
mash it all
you're
together
making
myself.
better
I think
business
increasingly we
decisions,
will find
no matter
agents that
where
can
you
do that
sit.
for us.
And I love that, and I
we'll
love
take
that
some of the
model
load
of
off so that
skills-based
I'm not spending my
organizations
entire morning trying
where,
to figure
in
out
fact, you can
where I'm
do
going to
that.
park
But
and
what does it
where should I
mean
eat
for
and do I need the
leadership
umbrella. But
development
I'll just
programs
know.
and
Yeah,
employee
I'll have a
development programs?
recommendation
Because
for where I
we
should
are
go and
still
how I
in,
should
aren't
get
we?
there
This
and
is
what
our
I should
CFO
do.
development program.
You know, and I can
This is our
spend
CIO
the
development
morning
program.
instead thinking
What,
about, well,
what's one
what are we going to do when we
capability
get there?
you
Who are we
would
going to
put
meet?
in
You know,
every
how,
CFO
you know, what's my son going to think
development
of this? What's
program?
my
And do
daughter?
you
You know,
think it
what
needs
should
to
my
be a
wife and I do
CFO in
when they're
inverted commas
occupied?
development program?
I think that can
I
be
don't
really
think it needs
freeing
to be a
and really
CFO because
exciting
leadership
and
is
give us
leadership,
all
right?
a bit of
I think the
sort of
first thing we need to
headspace
stop
think
doing
more about
is promoting
how
people
things
on
do
the
fit
what.
together. When we've got
Right?
easier access
I
to
think
the
the
data
first
about the
thing we
world around us,
can
we can
start
to spend a
doing
little bit
is
more time on
promoting
what it
people
means,
on their
you
how.
know, to be savvy about the
Promoting the
insights from it, and
smartest
not just savvy
person
about where all the
who
data
may be
is and how we
technically
put
the
it together.
smartest may not always
So that's
be.
my
A
optimistic
leader
vision
does
is
not
that it's
need to
actually
know
going
all
to
the
free up
answers. A
a lot
leader
of
does
time
not
for
need
us
to be
to
the smartest person
think
in the
about
room.
and answer the
A
questions
leader
that we
needs
just don't
to
get
know how
time
to
to focus on
galvanize
today.
talent. They
And I'm
need to
hearing
know
that the
when a
decision
talent
still
is
remains
delivering
human at the
value
end
or
of
when they're not.
insights
Do they need
from
to
this
understand
software.
the technicalities?
I
Yes.
think it needs to be.
But they don't need to be
I
the
don't
smartest
fundamentally
person in
believe
the
that
room,
AI
right?
is
And how do we
categorically
actually
different
even
than
groom
all of the
people to be
really
people,
huge,
talent
earth-shaking
developers
innovations that we've seen in the past
as
200
part
years.
of core leadership? You
I think in
promote
every
them from
case
that up,
we've,
and then
you know, we
make that
found that
because
automation,
the moment we are a leader, we have a
steam-driven
responsibility
machinery
to the
or
people that we are
early
managing.
software
Their
or AI
livelihoods, their
engines.
futures.
I think at the end of the
And
day,
making that a core
end
part
up
of leadership.
allowing us to do,
And it's
in
so
some
important.
cases, a
If I come
higher
back
level
to
or
where
a
we first
different
started,
job
which was
than
sort
what
of
we were doing
business
before.
cases and
I
business
think
plans,
we find
what does that mean, Jasmine, for
those unasked
the business
questions
cases we
when
put
we
together
have
for
tools and automation
recruitment
that
and
take
for
away the
development?
drudgery of doing
So
the
the
work as we
business
do it today.
cases,
And
if
I
I
think that
look
will hold
at
true in the AI
recruitment
world as
and
well.
development, is
And what's
one
your
I think
vision for
I've
Earth
shared.
Savvy?
Let's just
Matt,
promote people on the right.
what's your vision for how
right
Earth Savvy is going to play out?
and leadership,
Well,
not
fundamentally,
because
I
they
believe
are,
really strongly that in
let's get away
free
from
years that we're all going to find
encouraging
that Earth
and
observation
rewarding
satellite data is going to be
the
just
white
as much a
horse
part of
who
our
comes
everyday
in and
lives
saves
as
the day,
GPS data is
right?
today. I mean, if you think of
And
everything
as
that
leaders
20 years
question,
ago,
why
GPS
is it
was just
that
driving
you
directions.
were
It
the
was the little
one
box on
person who
your
had to come
dashboard
and
that
save
you
the day?
bought
Is it
from
because
Garmin
you
or
did not
TomTom.
develop
TomTom.
talent that you
And today
around you?
it's
Is it
everywhere.
because you
It's
did not bring
location-based
people in?
ads,
So I think
local
that
search.
culture
It's,
that
you know,
needs to shift.
what's the nearest
And
coffee
then I
shop
look
that's open right
at
now where I
business
can buy a
cases
pastry
and
or buy
development from that perspective. The next
and
perspective
that
is
explosion was all driven
really
not by new
honing
hardware.
in
We've
and
had the
saying, look,
same 31 GPS satellites in
yes,
orbit for
let's
basically the
assume a
last 40
traditional
years.
40-hour
Gotten a little bit
work
better and
week,
they've been in place.
but let's make it
it's really
our
no different from the hardware
responsibility
level. It's
and
all about the software and the way
obligation
that
that as
information
part
has
of that,
been freed up from
10%
just
of our
being about
time
points
is
in space and
invested,
time to being
and it's our job
essentially a layer
to
of
focus
information
on
about the world.
developing
And Earth
leadership
observation
skills.
data, the data is even richer than
And make
GPS.
it
There's
real,
even more insight
and
out there
then
about
separately
everything from how the
holding
crops are growing
leaders
in fields around me
accountable
to whether
to deliver
a given shipping
against those
port is
leadership
congested
skills.
or not.
So I think
And
on
I think
one
we're going to
end,
find
we have to
in 3
create the
years that we're
capacity
just
and make it
relying
a
on that data. We may
priority,
not
but on
recognize
the
it's
other
coming
end,
in
we
the same
have
way
to
that we don't
hold into
recognize
account.
that GPS data is what allows us to find
And both of them
a gas
require
station
investment.
nearby before we run out of
Totally.
petrol.
And if I come back to the
But
spreadsheets, I like the idea
we will
of
be using it every
giving a
day.
certain
We'll be
amount of
using it to
budget
make
to
decisions about
investment.
where to go for a
But how
walk
do
so we
you
don't get stuck in the
quantify
mud. We'll
that?
be using it to, in our work lives.
Quantify
And I think Earth Savvy
the
will
budget.
be the
How do we
platform
make it
behind all of that.
into
That's
figures?
what we're trying to do, and that's what we're trying
Into
to
figures?
create.
Well, I think
Brilliant.
you can,
And I
right?
think
So like
the
if we get
software,
laser
constantly
focused
updating
on, let's
software.
take
I think we
leadership
also need to start
development,
constantly
right? In the
updating our
business
human
for
software, which
leadership.
is where we
And
started
we're
this
going to
conversation.
invest
That's
in,
right. That's right. But we've got to make it simple enough. You know, we don't
invest
update our human
in,
software. We don't want to meet the machines
building
where they
a
are.
skill-based
It's really their job,
organization.
software's job to meet us.
And let's say,
And I think we
I'll
need to be
pick one,
conscious of the fact that
storytelling.
there
Like
is
I'm
that
just gonna-
divide between
Right.
their software
Okay,
and
so
our software.
what does
But,
that mean then? That means that in a
Matt,
business
you've
case,
done
the
so
way I
much
quantify
transformation
that
in so many
is,
different
one,
areas. What
assessing
is
my
the most
talent
transformative
on
thing
a
you've ever
periodic
done?
basis against that skill, number
Oh,
one.
wow. That's
Number two, also quantify and
big question.
identify
It's a really
the
big
number of
question. No, I think
instances that capability
I
is
think
getting
the
actively
coolest moment for me,
utilized
the coolest
to drive
individual
a
moment
different outcome
was
and taking
it was
credit
part of
for it.
SkyWise,
Because it does,
and it was
if you start
it was
practicing
not a
those
particular
muscles, the
an individual
outcomes
solution.
then
That wasn't what
become
felt really
a
transformative
natural
about it to me.
result.
But it was when I saw it
And
for the
getting
very
very
first time.
ruthless and
It was
measuring that,
initially it was
as much as it might
people
not
at
be a
AirAsia,
traditional
so
of
the carrier based in
X basis points
in
off
Malaysia
of my
that
cost of
serves
production,
destinations all
right?
across
Or
Southeast Asia.
X basis
Was
points
when
of
I
my
saw
cost of
how
goods
they were
sold.
using SkyWise
Yes, it's
in
not
their
that
operations
binary,
to deal
but
with
turning
passenger
it into that.
disruptions. You know,
And then
anything
what
from
I
a plane
love at the
breaking
end of the
down to a
day
delay at an
is
airport
actually
to
then
a
going
storm
back and
passing
saying,
through.
okay, let's look at
They
how
were
do I now
basically
make
they were
it
still
even more
focused on their
finance
job as an
if I
airline.
am
So the
if
job
the
hadn't
team
changed. It
is
was get
managing
passengers
a
from
portfolio
Kuala
of
Lumpur to
10 clients
Bangkok as
across
quickly and smoothly as possible.
20 business,
But
10
they were
clients
using
across
the data
5
from
business
SkyWise about
units.
the maintenance of aircraft, about where
Where
all
am
the
I
other aircraft in their
seeing
fleet were, and the
those 10
readiness of their
clients?
state,
Have
the
I
configuration, whether
increased
one could be swapped for
my
another. They
business
had combined
portfolio
it with all
across
the
those
information
10
they had about passengers, who
and
was doing
measuring that?
connections, where they were coming
And
from,
have I
how much
also
time they had to get to the
expanded the scope of
destination,
services where
to
now
come up
these
with
10
the
clients
right
are
answer
getting
in every
serviced by all
individual
5 of
case
my
when a
business
particular
units,
plane
right?
was delayed.
So
What is
flexing
the
both
least disruptive
horizontally
way
and
for
vertically
the
to see the
collection of
uplift.
passengers across the whole network?
Because these
So to me, it was
outcomes
just
will
a
become
wonderful
relevant
example
there.
of true
Yeah,
systems
and so
thinking,
I'm almost
truly
hearing a
thinking
different
about an
model
airline
as you're. I'm
at the
thinking
heart, the
visually as
means
you're
to get
sketching it out.
people, to go
what
visit
does
their loved
AI
ones, or
bring
to
to
go off
that?
on holiday at the right time, to minimize the disruption
AI
in their
brings
lives
to it
by using this
is
rich
in a
data that we've
match
provided to
speed,
them, a lot of their own insights.
right? Being
And
able to
fundamentally,
do
they
it
were
at
asking
speed.
different questions.
So
They were trying to solve the problem, and they were able to
one,
use
it's at
that
speed.
technology and that
Two,
new platform that we brought to the aviation industry to
it
make
also
people's lives
means
better
that how we
in a
get there, the
fundamentally
cycle
different,
time
very
is faster,
system-oriented way. Which was
Yeah.
just,
and you
it
can
was
have
really
more
neat to see that. They
generalists
weren't the
on your
last ones to
teams
do it,
getting
by the way.
there.
The first
So
No.
if you
ones I
think
saw, they were
about
the
the world
first,
of
and I was
AI
really
that we live in,
Yeah, because
I'll
you
use
saw
programming,
the collective
software
impact
programming.
of what you'd imagined, I would
And
imagine.
I go back to my
That's
comment,
right,
like my
it
comment
just, I
earlier
guess it
of,
felt like the
you know,
biggest transformative
the
thing, because it
genesis
wasn't
of
just one
why you
company, and it
needed
wasn't
a
just
very
Airbus, and it wasn't just
exclusive
our team.
technology
Yeah.
department,
It
because
was
that
ultimately
is where you
billions of
house
people
all of your
that fly
programming.
every year, and
And it's a very
ultimately making their lives
specialized
better,
skill
and making
and
transport a little bit
highly
smoother
sought
for
after,
everybody.
and
which
because it's
is
such a
already
specialized
great.
skill, it needs to
Yeah.
only sit in that
Matt,
domain.
so just to
But what
finish
is
off,
AI really
if a
doing?
leader listening
AI is
today
saying that
wants
actually
to
you don't need a
start
software
thinking more
programmer anymore.
systemically tomorrow
What
morning,
you
what's
need
the
is
first small
someone.
shift
Do you
you think they
need
should
a
make?
PhD in data science? No.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
But do you need people
that's a
who
really great question.
understand how
I
data
think,
models work as a generalist?
the first
Yes.
shift that I
So
would
that
make,
means
and
that
a
now
lot of people do this already, so it may not be the
technology
first
is
shift
no
for
longer a
everybody, but
dedicated vertical
I like
that
to
is
think,
very
because
highly
I kind of
specialized.
picture
But if I'm finance,
the model I
since
have in
we're
my head
talking about
of
finance
any
here,
organization really
I am
is
more
almost like a balloon,
empowered
right?
to
You
build
have,
those
you have
models.
the organization, everybody
Granted,
inside of
I
the
have,
balloon,
I
and then you've
understand
got
and
that
have
rubber
a
surface
certain
that
level of
is,
digital literacy.
the connection between everything on the outside
So I
and
can
everything that's
then get
inside
there
the balloon.
faster,
And
and
I
I can
think
build models
we
that
often pay so
actually
much
deliver the
attention to the
outcomes
things
that we
sort
are
of
looking
inside
for
of the
as a
balloon.
finance
That's all the
community.
people in the organization, or all the members of our
So
family,
digital
or the people in
literacy,
our
which
community.
we know is,
And we don't think
and AI
enough
literacy is going to be
what does the whole
a
surface
new
of that
leadership
balloon
skill
look
that
like? What are
everybody
all
needs
of the
to have,
touch
whichever
points that we
generation.
have with
Whatever
varying
generation.
other
degrees.
companies?
Yeah.
If it's a
Okay.
business, our
And if I
suppliers, our
fast
customers,
forward
our,
us 4 or
the
5 years,
stakeholders that we
what
depend on,
would a
that we might
finance
not
function look
recognize,
like
people
in an
running roads, or
organization
running
that had got
ports,
this
or
transition right,
handling
Yasmin?
customs
Can you
checks,
sort
and
of
things like
visualize
that. I
it
think
for
really
us?
taking an inventory of how big is that surface?
One,
So what is how do you assign everybody that's
5 years
inside
from
how big
now,
is the surface of that balloon?
the type
We
of
don't know.
Who are the other
right?
people,
I think the
companies,
structure is
government
going to be much more
organizations that you
fluid,
touch
much
that you
more
might not
horizontal, right?
be spending
I
any
think
time thinking
successful,
about?
high-performing
But I
finance
think that to me
functions
is the
are
beginning
going to
of how
have
you
more
start to
diverse
build that
capabilities sitting
hypothesis,
in
that
the
mental
function.
model of how
High
you work,
performing.
how your organization
They're
works,
not
how your
going to
company, your
be
community works.
your traditional
And once you,
talent
then once you've
with
got that hypothesis,
finance
then all of a
disciplines.
sudden
It's
you'll
not
start
going
to
be
see
exclusive
how
to that.
data and insights,
I
whether
think
they're
that's going
coming
to be
from
a
a
big change.
dashboard or an AI
I also
agent doesn't
think the
really matter. You'll
demographics
start to
and
see how that data
profile, it's not going
begins
to
to
be
fit
just
in.
human
Either
talent, it's going to be
reinforces your
digital talent
hypothesis,
as
if
well.
you've got it right, or starts
Right?
to
It's going to be a
challenge some of
combination of those two.
the assumptions that you have. But I think
My
it's
counsel
taking that
to,
inventory first.
because I also
And
am
spend
an
a bit of time
adjunct
with a
at
cup of tea
breakfast
or a cup of
business.
coffee.
And my
a bit
counsel
of
to
personal time in the
the up
morning
and coming
give
talent
that
of
some thought.
tomorrow
I think that
is
starts to unlock then all the stuff that we've been
how
talking
do we
about.
help them
A lot of
build
data that
some
can
of
tell
these
you how you fit
muscles
into the broader
so that
system
as
around
they
you, but
enter the
you have to understand
workforce,
first what that is.
Absolutely. And I'm going to leave our
they're
listeners with that
coming from a
because,
point
as we
of
said, you know, it's
resilience
a
and
muscle, isn't
strength.
it? Systems thinking. So
And
the daily
5 years
practice
from
or
now,
weekly practice
while the
of
world
sitting
will
down,
continue to
taking
move
distance
because
and
as
having a look at where
organizations
I
were,
am outside of my
we're
bubble
not always
in the bigger
look to
balloon,
create
I
more
think is
value,
great. So I'm going to
but
leave
for that
our
up and
listeners with
coming
that.
talent,
Matt,
how
thank
do
you so
they
much for
lean
coming on
into
and
that
sharing about Earth
disruption
Savvy and your
elevate
thoughts and your
themselves?
experience. Where
And
can
I
people
think,
find out more about
I
you, more
think
about Earth
they need
Savvy,
to
what you're
start
doing?
elevating themselves today and
Well,
get
with
in
Earth
front
Savvy, I'd
of the
encourage you
change
to
and the
just to go on our
disruption.
website, and you know, very soon you'll be able to get
And
on
if
the
that
app as
would
well.
that be
But we're
your
just at
final call to action if I were
earthsavvy.ai.
to ask
So
you
Earth
to
and Savvy is one
leave our
word,
listeners with a
.ai.
final call to action
And
around
certainly
staying
I'm on
relevant
LinkedIn.
in
There's a lot of
finance,
Matthew
what
Evanses,
would that be?
unfortunately, but if you Google Matthew Evans
What
and
that
Earth
would
Savvy,
be
then
is to say my
you'll find
final
me,
call to
and I'm
action
always
is
happy for people to connect. And
young talent, folks who
Okay,
are
super. And
already
I'll put
within
the
the
links in the show notes so that
organization,
people can find you
is
straight away.
as a function,
Thank you.
Thank you,
as
Matt. Thanks for a
an
great conversation.
individual, as
Thank you,
an
Susie. Always great to be
organization.
here.
Likewise.
AI is here to stay, and it's going to change, and it's changing. So in order to remain relevant, we need to continuously reimagine how we create value beyond the surface layer. And how we create value for tomorrow is not going to be obvious, but how we get there is continuously investing in ourselves, in our teams, in our organizations, so that we can lead from the front and not the back.
Thank you. I'm going to leave our listeners with continuously investing in themselves, in their teams, in the organization, but also recruiting for adaptability is what I take away from this discussion, not just credentials. And, you know, this whole piece around if you're a leader, you have to develop your talent, and not just technologically, but also, and more importantly, on the human side of organizations, which are essentially living organizations, aren't they? Because they are made from the people within them. So
that's right.
Yeah, I'm also taking away, Yasmin, that transformation isn't a system upgrade; it's a mindset shift. So that's my biggest takeaway from today's discussion, and I'm also going to leave our listeners with that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience and your insights. Where can people find out more about you, Yasmin, and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So the easiest way to get a hold of me is I'm on LinkedIn, Jasmine Ahmed. They can easily reach out to me by email. I absolutely am passionate about uplifting the people element in organizations. So I'm very much passionate about it. And they can reach out to me as I truly believe in. The legacy I want to leave behind and work with folks on is helping every person become a better version of themselves every day they wake up. And they can reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to help them with that.
Okay, well, I'll put all those notes, all those links in the show notes, and your quest is very clear. So I'm not going to say anything else about that. A quest that I share, of course. So thanks once again, Yasmin. Thanks for a great conversation.
Thank you, Susie.